Hello and welcome to a VO's Journey podcast. This is episode number 202, and this show is all about helping the new and upcoming voiceover artist grow their business and sidestep all the crazy things that I seem to step on. We have a fantastic episode today. I had the pleasure, nay, the honor to interview two incredible people, Dan Zitt and Julie Wilson from Penguin Random House Audio and the co-creators and founders of AhabTalent.com, which is an incredible website that's bringing together voice actors, content creators, people from all over the voiceover industry to produce audiobooks. And it is absolutely exciting to share this interview with you. So I'm really thrilled to get into this. I think you're going to love it. They have such a wealth of knowledge. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, let's do it. This is VO's Journey. With your host, the incomparable Anthony Pica. All right. Well, it is super exciting. We are here with two awesome people from Ahab Talent. We have Julie Wilson, Dan Zitt. Is that right? Is that how you say it?
Dan Zitt.
Awesome. Well, let me have you guys introduce yourselves. I'm excited to dive in. I know Ahab Talent is a place where I have been on for a little while and recently gone back on because it just revamped itself. But let's start off with some introductions. So, Julie, go ahead. Tell us all about yourself.
Hey there. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
My name is Julie Wilson, and I work at Penguin Random House Audio. I've been in the audiobook industry for around 15 years now, which is freaking bananas. And basically, I'm our senior manager of digital production platforms. And what that means is I produce around 100 audiobooks a year, but I'm also the co-creator of Ahab, our global voiceover casting platform, which we just relaunched.
Awesome. Well, great to have you, Julie. All right, Dan.
All right. My name is Dan Zitt. I'm the SVP of Content Production for Penguin Random House Audio, which is a really fancy way of saying I oversee all of audiobook production for Penguin Random House in the US. I've been producing audiobooks for my entire career since I'm 19 years old, 25 years I've been doing this. I've produced well over 2,000 books. I haven't checked, but the count's probably creeping closer to 3,000 books in my career.
Wow.
So I am one of the creators of Ahab, and I'm really excited to be here with you, Anthony.
Man, it is great to have you two here. And I have to say, I've done actually hundreds of audiobooks, but none of the audiobooks that I've done, and I think a lot of the audience that I have, a lot of us are very independent audiobook producers, and we look at a place like Penguin and get really excited because, it's kind of a pinnacle type thing that a lot of us would love to get involved with. So this is where let's get into Ahab Talent. I'm excited for you guys to just, tell us what it is and your thoughts and your direction and, why we all should get involved.
I think it's important to start with Ahab and kind of like where it came from,
okay,
and where it is. And Julie can talk about, the evolution of Ahab. I know we're talking a lot about what we're calling a relaunch, but I just call it an evolution of the site. Ahab started close to 7 years ago or so with just a couple of people sitting in a room saying, how can we cast a much wider net to find actors, not only locally in New York and LA, because a lot of the audiobook industry is in New York and LA, but go more locally outside of those areas and cast a much wider net and find actors all over the country and then potentially all over the world. So what we decided to do was create a database that actors can enter as much information about themselves so that we at Penguin Random House Audio and the producers of Penguin Random House Audio can discover talent more easily. Because traditionally it was like, we have to work through agents, and it was word of mouth, and it was, hey, that guy read this book that's kind of similar to something I'm working on. And we really wanted to cast a much wider net and give actors a lot more opportunity to kind of break down those walls between talent and the decision makers. So we launched the site. It was a simple database, kind of more of an intranet site just for producers at PRH. And then slowly realized that, this could be much, much more. So Jules, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah, I think the thing that Dan and I have always focused on with growing Ahab has been twofold. One has been bringing our offline process online and streamlining everything we do over email, over phone, even in person in the office, as well as growing this ecosystem of actors, agents, and content creators in a way that really works very seamlessly together. And that has never been more important than right now when we're all very far apart and missing our coworkers and missing the agents and actors we work with every day. So where we're going with all of this is we've just launched agent profiles, which has always been really an integral idea to the site. So when we first started going to LA and Toronto and talking to British agents, they were always a little bit worried about a new platform coming up, and they didn't want us to get in the middle of their relationships with their actors and getting them work. And that has never been our intention. And so they were actually the first people we started taking meetings with before we talked to content creators, before we talked to actors. And so we've been working really hard over the past few years creating agent profiles so that they can manage their talent online. And the thing about Ahab too, though, is you don't need to have an agent. We want to just leave that relationship with you. So if you represent yourself, you can be on the platform as an actor and, find work for yourself, audition, field offers, field your submissions. We have a whole area of the site where actors can see where they've auditioned in the past and the dialogues they've had with content creators in the past. So it's a nice way for actors to keep track of everything that they've done on Ahab and everything they've auditioned for. But agents can do that as well. And then with this recent relaunch, we have opened up the platform to content creators outside of Penguin Random House. And that's been our really, really big announcement. So over the past 5 years, we've been working on this since 2015. Wow. So I guess almost 6 years now. It's been a Penguin Random House audio tool, and that's in the US, that's in Canada, that's in India, that's in Australia, UK, Brazil, hopefully maybe getting into Germany a little bit. But now we're inviting on content creators in podcasting and internet video, in documentaries and all over the place. So we're really excited to open it up to everybody.
That's awesome. Okay, so thank you guys so much. I'm sorry for the hiccup there with the audio, everybody. Thank you, Julie and Dan, for being so understanding. All right, so I'm really excited about what you guys just said about actors being able to represent themselves, because I think with everything going on, so much more the evolution of the home studio, it's so important for that to happen. So let's dive into, from your standpoint, we've got a lot of people who want to get involved, want to get work, want to work through Ahab. Tell us a little bit about, the process, what people need to do to get work, and what they should have. And also I'm interested in the idea of, I saw that there's possibly commercial work also. Am I right or wrong that's available on Ahab now?
So when we release the site to content creators outside of Penguin Random House, in your profile, you're allowed to have, a number of clips for all these kind of different genres of voiceover. So when we originally launched the site, the expectation was that most people would just kind of put an audiobook clip on there, or several audiobook clips, so we can vet them, because that's our business, right? And as we discovered, people are casting for all kinds of things. And, we talk about voiceover a lot, but I call everything kind of audio entertainment. And I think, the crossover ability of actors who are doing audiobooks, or people that are doing other genres of voiceover that can come over to audiobooks, we want to kind of give them an opportunity to kind of show all of their talent on the site. So when you upload clips, you're able to upload all kinds of clips from all different types of things. So if you do video games, or you want to do video games, you can upload a clip of you doing like 37 crazy voices, or, you screaming, or whatever video game producers are looking for. So, the most important thing to start off for actors to know is like, fill out your profiles from start to finish. We have a ton of actors in the platform that uploaded like their name and one clip and a picture and nothing else. And if you don't have, and Jules, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 2 clips in the platform, then you're not even showing up in search in our platform. So you need to be thorough about making sure that every field in your profile is filled out, and that you've got as much information there as you possibly can. Because the way the search engine works is that if I'm looking for a specific type of voice in a specific age range for a character that I'm casting, I'm going to want to put in that data and have it kind of like spit out all this information on people that potentially could match for that project. So as it relates to commercial voiceover, the hope is with this new release of the platform that people that are casting for all types of audio are going to come to the platform. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, I'll say it right here, it's free. Like we built this platform on community. And the one thing we know about actors is actors are out there hustling, man. Like this is not like, we don't want to be in the business of creating a platform where we charge you thousands of dollars every year for the potential to get work. And then when you actually get the work, start kind of skimming money off of every single transaction that goes on there. This is about kind of like building a community of people who are working all the time. And Julie, you can talk a lot about this, like what we did right when COVID hit, because the first thing we realized as soon as COVID hit was like, there's a lot of actors out in the world that are out of work right now. For whatever reason, you're in theater, you're working on film, on TV. Like, so when we built this, we reached out to everybody and we're like, look, the voiceover world continues. We need to keep working. We need to keep actors working. It's like, so that's part of the reason we built the site, and the fact that we're free and will continue to be, for actors is really important. A lot of actors are out there like working, doing voiceover or trying to break into voiceover or trying to break in period. And they're doing three other jobs. They're hanging drywall, they're waiting tables. And now they're not even able to do that in some cases. So,
Absolutely.
Really when we built the site, it was about kind of democratizing that process a little bit.
Wow. And I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I know, Julie, maybe you want to say some things, but first off, I have to say that's exciting in the fact that what you just said. So let me get this straight. So what you're saying is that Ahab's free. There's no fees that you guys charge voice actors.
No, nothing.
Wow. No. So that separates you guys from like everyone.
Yeah. I mean, look, Anthony,
everyone does that.
Jules and I have spent, the better part of our lives in this industry. We know actors. We are friends with actors. We know the struggle, man. We understand it. And we also just understand the fact that like the people that are making casting decisions are the people that should be paying, because they're the ones with the money, right? Like this kind of weird world where people build websites with this idea that we're going to take 10% of every transaction.
It's actually 13, I believe.
13 in some cases, and in others, it's much higher than that. Like, it's just, it really kind of, it's not the way it should work, Like, so we kind of like looked at it and said, everybody's zigging. We're zagging. This is not about, and for us, you have to remember, the site comes from a place where we had a need, and the need was to find more actors. Like, I'm not going to charge them because I have a need. Like, that's just not the way this should work.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, that's exciting for voice actors. Do you have anything on that, Julie?
I mean, Dan said a lot of it. I think the most important thing here, and the thing that we always say, is it's a site built by producers. Like, we built it to be in line with our process. And I think in that way, the site is a lot more intuitive than some of these other sites that are out there. And that came from, so first, as I mentioned earlier, we went to the agents and we said, what do you need? What do you want? What can we do for you guys that's been better than these other sites? Then we went to the content creators and we started in-house with all of the Penguin Random House audio producers. And we said, what do you want out of a site like this? Like, what would make your lives easier? And then we got that feedback. And then we did trials with them. And then we went to content creators outside of Penguin Random House. And we said, tell us about your process. And we did that not only in the US, but in multiple countries to understand these other markets. Mm-hmm. So, and then again, I would say at the start of COVID, what Dan was tipping to is there was about a week where I barely slept because I was just shooting off emails to agents and saying, hey, like, we want to get your talent on here. Like, we have work. Like, we know people are worried about income, they're worried about getting work. We're casting for 1,700 audiobooks in the US alone, and all of our colleagues all over the world are also casting off of Ahab. So please get your actors on here. We want to audition them. We want to get to know them. We want to hire them.
Wow. I would love to have you guys, because I have you here. I'd love to hear you talk about what you see going on in the audiobook industry or in general, because you've mentioned a lot so far about agents. And I know we talked briefly about Ahab having a place maybe for agents or something like that. A lot of us and a lot of my audience is independent. You know, they represent themselves, but a lot of people also, you know, started in this business recently and want to learn how to work with agents and how to do all of that. So I just love to hear, you know, y'all's take on what you see in the audiobook industry with agents, how that relates to Ahab, and just kind of talk to me about what you guys are seeing there.
I mean, I think, look, we talk a lot about agents, but the only reason we talk about it is because we started out by trying to figure out who are all the people that we work with on a daily basis. We work with independent narrators. We work with agents. We work with, you know, casting companies occasionally if we have to. Like, the idea is like to find a way for all of these parties to coexist, right? And in the US, you know, agent culture is not as pervasive in the audiobook industry as it is in, say, Canada, where everyone has an agent in Canada. And if you don't, you're not working. You know, in the US, it's always kind of been, you know, actors, when they started out in audiobooks years ago, especially out in LA, you know, nobody had an agent. It was like, hey, do you want to discover an actor? Do you want to read a book for us? And let's try this and let's work. I think, you know, what we're trying to do with the platform is also kind of like educate and bring people up in the industry. Because what happened in the audiobook industry for years was, it started out, we were only doing, like, you know, when I started, maybe 100 books a year in audio, right? At one publisher. And now, and what happened over the next 20 years was that the volume of recording went up so high, so that there were so many books being produced, thousands, like 14,000 plus books in 1 year, maybe even more than that, that what was happening was it was almost outgrowing process for a lot of companies. So producers, what they were doing was just kind of going to all the actors they've always worked with all the time. And I think that happened for years. And when we started building the platform, the idea was like, you know, we would sit back and go, whatever happened to discovery of new talent? Whatever happened to kind of grooming talent in our industry the way it happened 20 years ago? You know, out in LA, Dan Musselman, one of our colleagues, who started at Books on Tape and is a member of our staff. He's been doing this. I always call him the godfather of audiobooks out in LA. You know, Dan Musselman discovered a ton of talent in LA that had never read audiobooks, brought them in, trained them, had them work with directors over the years. And now they're the people who are kind of like the celebrities of the industry, the Scott Bricks of the world, the Cassandra Campbells of the world, people who are working all the time. But the problem was, there's no outlet for the new group of the Scott Bricks and the Cassandra Campbells and the Dion Grahams and people like that, right? So part of what we're trying to do is really find the next crop of actors that are going to help support this industry, and also find ways for them to diversify their talent and work in other genres. So, you know, I mean, I think the tool is built really for discovery for producers as their lists grow, to not always have to just depend on the people they've always worked with. And I think that gives a lot of opportunity for people who have not worked in this industry at all. I mean, Jules, I think the number we throw around a lot is 200 because it's been like 2 years, but it's probably way more than that because the database before that, we didn't really track the numbers. But we've hired hundreds of actors that we never worked with before over the last 5 years because of this platform.
It's awesome.
And we want to give a lot more opportunity to actors who have never read audiobooks. Also, you know, it's a little selfish. We really want our authors to have the right voice for every book, not just the one that's kind of like the easiest to find every time.
Well, and I think I have two things to say to both of those. And going back to your original question about agents, the thing that I've observed, and again, this is totally separate from Ahab. We like Ahab to reflect however people are working outside of Ahab. That's our goal. But the interesting thing I've noticed as just an audiobook producer and professional is that there have been growing audiobook departments in all of the major talent agencies. And I think that's really interesting. And that's because the work is growing.
Yeah.
And so, just like in these other areas of the voiceover industry, there's obviously a need to manage people and have somebody negotiate your contract or see, you know what, you've done 300 audiobooks, maybe it's time to up your rate or whatever it might be. Or maybe it's their time to look through their voiceover roster and say, you know what, these people aren't right for audiobooks, but maybe these ones are. Because the thing about audiobooks is you're either well suited for it or you're kind of not. It's something very specific,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to video games or animation or any type of commercial voiceover that's like, say a line, you say a line, say another one, say it this way. You're going to be sitting in a booth for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. days in a row, for 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day with breaks, and really immersing yourself in long form content. So that's just something very unique to our industry, our part of the industry. And then going back to something else that Dan was saying in terms of finding new talent, I mean, that was the first thing that I loved about Ahab, is that we were getting very carefully catered actors for every single role. And that was, so prior to Ahab, I always say I would go onto our competitors' websites. I'd go see who won past awards. I would see who were getting rave reviews. And that's how I would find actors. But I had no idea of the range and breadth of their work and their talents. And now we use Ahab to see what languages they can do, what accents they can do. Even, are they trained in mocap? Do they have a home studio? Where do they live in the world? Where did they grow up? Like, maybe they have an accent from that very specific region.
Right.
Do they have knowledge of physics or dance or something specific that we might want to match up with a specific audiobook? Because just like I said, it's long form content. So if you have a mastery of like math, physics, something where like terminology is very specific and you need specific pronunciations, it's really important for us to have someone who's knowledgeable in that area. So lots of stuff going on there.
Absolutely. I love that. It's so great you guys brought that up. I work with voice actors all over the world now. And it's incredible the amount of talent that I think is, I wouldn't say under the rug, but the amount of talent that is just, out there now that, like you said, I mean, they don't know things, what I mean? And this is an exciting opportunity. So, okay. So we've got this platform. We've got this new way to connect. And what's your advice for, so you said we want to have people filling out their profile, making sure that's fully done. What do you maybe kind of go in a little bit? I'd love for you guys having you here to give some advice to actors, voice actors, especially new ones. What can they do to possibly get work, grow as a audiobook narrator? Like genres or whatever you see as a good way to get involved, because there's a lot of people hungry for work, and they'll work and work and work. So we've got that. You don't have a lack of ambition, but definitely a lack of knowledge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would always start with, a good way, and we say this a lot now, this kind of has become our mantra over the last 6 months, but like, auditioning is working, and people have to remember that. Like, that is something that I think is a lost art in the audiobook industry, and it's something we're trying to bring back. Last week I posted an audition for a short literary novel, and I had 150 people post an audition for that. And I listened through every single one of those auditions. And through that audition process, I actually discovered a lot of people that I kind of put aside in one of my lists in Ahab and just kind of kept for, like, you know what, they might not be right for this book, but they might be right for something else. So like, get out there and audition when you're able to on the platform. But generally, taking a step back, I think there's a lot of resources out there. The Audio Publishers Association is a really great place. You can go to the Audio Publishers Association website. There are tons of resources there, including who kind of is become a member of the Audio Publishers Association. There's a ton of resources. They have meetups, they have drinks events, they have, well, in post-COVID, they will have more drinks events. But now they're having like online kind of meetups where actors can talk to content creators. that are part of the Audio Publishers Association. And I think those are good places to start. And then just kind of like go online, like, and I'll tip this over to Jules because she's like the social media maven in this little crew, but like social media and like getting to know people through all the different platforms, Facebook groups, Instagram, things like that is huge. Because I think I've seen on like Clubhouse is a thing Julie and I have been talking a lot about lately, because every day there's a voiceover group on Clubhouse talking about commercial voiceover, audiobook voiceover, video game voiceover, and those places to just kind of sit and listen to people who know what they're doing and how they started and how they got to where they are is going to get you a little bit further. But you have to be active and you have to be determined, because if you audition for 20 things and don't get 20 things, you have to audition for the 21st. You have to keep going. And I think that's a lot of what the advice I would give actors, at least at first.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff to add to that. I would say, well, one thing that I do think is important for people who are auditioning, I think people should audition for. So when actors log into Ahab, they will see the full public job board. So anything that's open to the entire database for people to audition for. And there will also be private auditions. And so if it's a private audition, it'll say invited. So you'll know that Dan invited you or I invited you. But I would say if you're auditioning for a lot of private auditions or a lot of auditions, and you're not getting anything or getting a response from content creators, then maybe pay attention to your craft and maybe say, you know what, is there something I need to improve on here? Because you've got to take that feedback, the positive and the negative, and see if it's actually your craft that you need to work on. Not saying in every case it's going to be, but it might be. And the one big thing that Dan left out is something that we invented last spring. So we have been doing a free monthly online webinar called the Ahab Breakdown, which has been very successful. And we've been really excited about it because, again, last spring we were looking around, we were gearing up to launch Ahab, and we wanted to continue to build this community. So the Ahab Breakdown happens once a month. We're going to be taking a break from June until August. So we're going to have 8 episodes in the first season, 8 episodes in the second season. And every single month we cover a different voiceover topic. And primarily that started in the audiobook industry, but now we're trying to expand beyond that. So we've had a tech episode, we had an episode with directors and actors, and we just had one that's like crossing borders into Canada and the UK, how to spread your voiceover range. And the next one's going to be really cool because we're going to be talking about voiceover or vocal health. So talking with an actor who's been in the voiceover industry for a long time, and then a doctor who has a lot of experience, obviously, with vocal health and helping actors. So again, it's entirely free. If you can come to the live episode, you can like ask us questions live and participate. We always pull up one actor onto our virtual stage in our what we call a VO roulette. So it's really engaging. But then if you don't happen to make it, you can watch all of our episodes on YouTube. So it's at Ahab Talent on YouTube. So you can always, it's funny, we've had a few actors come like a few degrees of separation say, oh, I'm doing the Ahab program. And we're like, what's the Ahab program? And they just mean that they're coming to the Ahab Breakdown every week and learning a lot. And so that was really cool and refreshing for us to hear. The other thing that we are doing on social media, so we have a wonderful marketing and publicity team that has been at our side the entire way. And they just launched their social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And if people tag ahabtalent.com or Ahab Talent in their studio selfies, so if you're in the booth and you tag them, we'll repost you, and that'll also give you more exposure to content creators and Penguin Random House content creators too.
No, I'm a big advocate for social media. I think that's why we're here together now. That's because someone found me on social media, and I'm loving everything you guys said about knowledge. I remember, it just brought to my mind, I had the fortune to work with Scott Brick one-on-one, great guy. And what took me about Scott, is how smart he is. I mean, just but you see just books everywhere. I mean, the guy knows so much about the craft, but not just the craft, writing and just everything in general. And I think that's something that's important too. As you guys said, I mean, the more knowledge you can have, the better you're going to be. I mean, I always thought actors, some of the smartest people. I mean, that might be biased, but
look, when you've read as many books as Scott has read,
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
easy to get smart. It's like 1,000 books or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, you guys, the information has been unbelievable so far. I'm interested in your thoughts about the future of audiobooks and the industry. Anything that you see new coming up, and I know broach the topic of AI. I'm sure that's on your radar because it's on a lot of people's radar, and a lot of people are thinking about it. And I don't know why they keep sending me emails about AI. I'm not gonna, but I keep getting emails. So, what are your guys' thoughts about that and the audiobook industry? Because I'm not saying it would happen, but it seems like the audiobook industry would be a target. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time studying all forms of technology as it relates to voice and AI. Interestingly enough, over the last several years, it's evolved and it's certainly gotten better. But I don't I don't think we truly believe in it. For our format. Like storytelling, especially when you get into things like fiction, where if you got a guy like Jim Dale coming into a room and doing 150 voices for Harry Potter.
Yeah.
AI algorithms are not built for that. Audiobooks in many ways are performance. We give some creative license to our actors to kind of develop the voices and work with our authors closely to develop the voices in the book. I think AI is a good, quick way for someone to get something on a site and try to sell it. I don't think it's a great listening experience, at least right now. I think there's a place for every form of technology, and I think AI there's some really great technologies in AI that we use kind of behind the scenes. There is technology where actors can have their audio content fed into something, and the book fed into something, and it will spit out every word you said wrong. So like if you're trying to get something really clean for a client and it's long form, that could really be helpful for you. I think there's like long term some really cool stuff that can be done with AI. Like for someone like Scott Brick, who's read 1,000 books, if we need a pickup from him or one word and he's out of the country, there'll be ways eventually to kind of leverage his catalog of voices and kind of like I got that one sentence out of AI and used it. I don't think it's something a lot of people will enjoy listening to for a prolonged experience. I think in other forms of voiceover like that, corporate stuff, telephone, switchboards, things like that, I think it's really useful, but like I'm not really sold on it yet. I think, look, I've always been a person that embraces technology. So like if we find a way to use AI in the future without kind of like changing the way that we work all that tremendously, in terms of just like we want to work with human beings, we want to work with actors, and we want actors who think about what they're reading and kind of develop a creative entity when we hand them a book, right? It's not just like, we don't want to kind of spit out an algorithm and a 16-hour book read by a computer. I think there's a lot of flaws in the technology right now, but you have to embrace it and you have to keep looking forward. I think we just kind of sit and wait, as I have been for the last 10 years. There's nothing there yet that I'm like, we can hold on to this. But I also think any technology like AI has to embrace the acting community too, and find ways for the acting community to make money from this.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
An algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be a company that's kind of like, oh, we're going to take all your voices and now we're going to sell audiobooks.
Right. Exactly.
Right. There's a lot of questions there. And I think things like SAG-AFTRA and the union really have to figure out some of that stuff too. But I will say this too. I think there's a place for AI in spoken word entertainment. I don't know that it's right now in the audiobook industry.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the future's unknown, right? And like Dan, I love technology. I love video games. I love the idea of AI. Before COVID, I went to this really interesting AI conference at BAM in Brooklyn. tried out all this cool type of like technology and headsets and all this stuff. So I never say never, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to happen in the next 5 years? I don't think so. I think Dan and I have looked at a lot of this technology and it's just not there. And I think the thing is too, Dan and I also come from a casting background. We're both writers and English majors. And what we are, one of the things at least I value most of all is a performance. And, you know, I love I speak home speaker. I won't say her name because it'll set her off. But you know, it's not human connectivity. And I think more than ever this year has taught all of us that we're social creatures. We're human, and we need, when we're listening to a novel and I'm hearing characters, I want to hear a person, and I want to hear them get to that point where they are that person, and there's no dissonance between that character and what I'm listening to. Um, and you know, acting is one of those arts that everyone thinks they can do it, and they can't. It's an art form. So, you know, it's not happening. I wouldn't want it to see it happen. I love what actors do every day. I love my relationships with actors. So pickups would be amazing. If we can get the technology for pickups to a place where we can get those lines and we can pick up those words and we don't have to bring actors back into the studio to do pickups, that would be absolutely unreal.
And the other thing I just want to add to this, and it really speaks to actors, is like, be very careful about how you're allowing anyone
Yes.
to ingest your content.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a lot of data farming going on out there. And, you know, it's kind of positioned in one way as like, oh, we're going to help you with this one little thing that's going to save you some time. But like, then there's a ton of ingestion of your voice, and then potentially some kind of like hybrid voice between maybe Anthony P and Scott Brick. And all of a sudden your voice is out there.
Exactly.
Without your permission. And I think you got to be really careful about using those platforms.
I'm a big advocate for that. I'm right there with you. I often say I you know, embrace it. It's silly to not pay attention and to embrace change, but I don't. You know, it's different to allow, I think, people to come, because there's a lot of companies that are going and trying to get voice actors to pay them to use their voices for these AIs. And I think that's, you know, trying to make sure, especially new voice actors don't know, you know what I mean? And they're kind of getting taken for a ride. And all of a sudden their voice is everywhere. And, you know, they don't get anything for it. I think from an acting standpoint of view, it would be great if at one point the industry, you know, they would be able to license to actors something to say, hey, you know, you can use this as, you know, your part of your, you know, business
portfolio.
Right, exactly. And it gets tailored completely to you. I think that, I mean, to me as a voice actor, like you said, I think that would be neat. But yeah, no, absolutely. I'm right there with you guys. So we're kind of coming down to the end. You guys have been amazing. I do want to ask this question to you, because a lot of people I work with, like I said, we've done a lot of things on Amazon ACX, and a lot of things on those platforms are on ACX are I don't want to say not everything is quality, but there's a lot of challenge. I think there's been a lot of frustration and upset with a lot of young voice actors trying to get into the audiobook industry and feeling discouraged because they're like, this is the audiobook industry. This kind of sucks, just because of the what's allowed to be put out there and what's available. So for new voice actors coming in, what is y'all's recommendation? Because since, you know, now that Ahab is available, which is great, because like I said, I think there's a couple other places. I know there's Find Away Voices. There's some different things, although Find Away Voices is what it is. But, you know, ACX is so open and known. What is your advice to newer voice actors trying to, you know, deal with this, I wouldn't say hurt, but frustration with things like ACX and books that are very difficult to read because they're poor and they're not being paid? You know, what's your advice for them to get back into the audiobook industry?
You know, look, I mean, I think And look, I've never worked on ACX, so I don't know a lot. I know a lot about that platform just from the stance of like, it's a rights platform, it's a rights exchange.
Right.
Post things, actors take on jobs, and then those books are sitting on Audible at some point. It's really interesting. I have a lot of actors who come to me and say, I've read 50 books for ACX, and I'm trying to break through. And I think everybody has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's not an endorsement of any platform at all, because I don't really know enough about any of them. I know a lot of the folks are at Findaway. They're good people. I know Mitch, the founder of that company, pretty well. I don't know a lot about their platform either. And I think my advice for actors is, be very careful about what you decide you're going to do, and in terms of like making sure that you're getting paid fairly, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all, I think everybody wants to gain experience. There's other ways of gaining experience without committing to something where you're not going to get paid. Like, the bottom line is, if you're an actor, and we're living in a time where, we talk about this a lot. We've had a bunch of events as it relates to equity and inclusion and things like that. We need to live in a time where the people that are producing content are paying actors, period. And this is not solely based on the idea that like, oh, maybe you'll get some money if this thing actually sells. Well, think about the thousands of audiobooks that are on platforms these days. Like, discoverability of audio content is really hard in this industry. It's hard for major publishers to say, we're going to get placement here and like hopefully get some promotion and get some momentum. I mean, imagine if you're doing a book from an author that was published 20 years ago and you're not getting paid for it, and you're hoping to get paid through, I don't know, a back end or something like that. You've got to, there's other ways to break into this industry and gain experience. I've heard great stories from people who have done a bunch of books on ACX and actually made a lot of money. And I've heard the opposite too. So, you got to pick and choose your path to success. And in my opinion, pay people for their work, period. And if you're not being paid, what are you doing it for? What are you working for if you're not getting paid? I mean, there's other ways of doing this. There's other ways of kind of like breaking in. And I think, independent publishing and things like that, there's a lot of that going on where people are just like hoping to make money off of something. And sometimes it hits, but most times it probably doesn't, in my opinion, right? It's like gambling with your career. I think taking the more kind of methodical approach and educating yourself and getting to know the people in this industry so that can teach you how to get cast and get paid is sometimes a better approach than just kind of saying, I've never read an audiobook, I'm just going to read something for someone.
Yeah. It's all right. I had to say, a lot of my journey has been, I was, I have a BFA in theater. I mean, I've been an actor my whole life. I started teaching theater and directing, and I toured professionally at stage acting. And then as time went on, and I had a family and I was at home, I got into voiceover, trying to continue to do acting, but still have a family and a mortgage and things like that. So voiceover was really fantastic. But I think what you're talking about here is really important. The reason why I asked you guys is because, when there's still not a lot of how-tos that are kind of written in stone in voiceover. So a lot of people flooding into the business are kind of just left, to see what is the hottest YouTube video at the time or something like that. And a lot of a VO's journey has become part of my journey in voiceover, not knowing anything about the voiceover industry and learning and growing to now talking to you all and all kinds of different people, learning more to try to bring education to more voice actors. Because I always thought, sometimes there's this battle that seems to wage between the different parts of the industry. And I think that battle is a lot of times just a lack of knowledge or connectivity or being able to communicate with each other because they don't know where to start. So that's part of what this is. And again, I appreciate you guys for sharing that. Julie, did you have any comments on that?
Yeah. I just want to say that, one of the things that has kept me in this industry is the community, the audiobook community. It's a really tight, supportive industry, whether that is between publishers or between producers or between actors or any cross section of those. So if you're not feeling that, you might be working with the wrong people. Because I have always felt very accepted, and I love getting drinks with people as much as I love working with them.
Mhm.
So I think, set your boundaries with what you'll accept in. And I'll also say something that we haven't touched on, which I think is good to mention, is be careful if you're working a lot in romance or erotica or some of these parts of the industry that you might get prejudged for if you work in others. For instance, if you're doing a lot of erotica, you're probably not going to be able to work in Christian or religious books because there's a conflict of interest there. So think about setting up certain pseudonyms for certain genre fiction, just because you are, as an actor, you're a packaged product, right? And your name is your marketing and your brand. And so you want to be aware of all those things because it might affect you being able to get work. It won't affect me wanting to hire you because I'll listen to your voice. And even if, no matter what genre it is, I'm like, oh, I want to hire this person. But if there's something in the background that might rub an author the wrong way, or a marketer or a publicist or the news, whatever, that's just something for you to be aware of. You are your own brand. And so whatever companies you work with, whatever books you accept, that is what you're putting out to the world. Information is everywhere on the internet now. So just be very careful about that.
And two other things to add to that. Pseudonyms are good. Pseudonyms are good when it comes to, I think, audiobook work. I think we're seeing it more and more. Jules and I have seen it over the years where, you have an actor who's like, you know what, all my erotica work is done under this name, and all of my Christian work is done under this name, and my name is for these things. Sometimes it's hard to do that, but I think, she's right. There are going to be producers out there who say, oh, this guy's read all of these types of books. I won't consider him for that. Right. Like, but if they're casting erotica, they're going to oh, I want this guy. This guy's great. The other thing to say, and it goes back to if you're not going to get paid for something, then donate your time to Books for the Blind. Or there's a great guy who works for, I think it's New York Public, but I'll get the information to you guys. James Langton, who's an actor. He's a British American actor, James Langton, who runs a program where, tons of people have broken in by going in and recording books for the blind and donating their time. So you're doing something for people, but you're also there's no expectation there, but it's a great training ground.
Right.
If you're not going to get paid and you're going to read really terrible books, then you might as well go there and probably get some pretty good books to read and get some training at the same time, right? So donate your time. It's worth, and more than likely you can get those tracks and post those samples and do things with that content, But yeah, I think you've got to look at your career. Don't ever get forced down a path just because everybody's like, this is the path you need to go. I
love that.
So just to jump off of what Dan said, we were just talking to James about the New York Public Library and Books for the Blind. So if anyone's interested in doing that, they can email him at jameslangton@nypl.org. And so that they can get tons of experience working and doing Books for the Blind. I know tons of people who have done that and have really just honed their chops there.
LANGTON.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'll try to put that in the in the description. Real quick, you mentioned something, and I know I don't think we ever talked about how long this is. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but you mentioned, Julie, you were saying too about, thank you for bringing up pseudonyms and things like that, but you said when you're listening to voices and you hear a voice that you like. So can I ask you, what is it, talk to us a little bit about what is it that you guys like to hear?
I actually wanted to. I was listening to a little bit of. I think it was like your 200th episode. It was some anniversary episode that you just did,
Yeah.
and you mentioned actors being worried about oversaturation of the market.
Mhm.
And the truth is, when I'm listening to samples, you're either it or you're not it. Or like you're kind of it, but that still means you're not it. So I think the describing what you're looking for is so hard because it's different for every single book. But what you're looking for is kind of, I mentioned that earlier, that there's no dissonance between that actor and that character. They are fully embodying it. And sometimes people go way too far with their emotions, or sometimes they're just not quite there. Or the thing that kills me the most, I'll tell you, is if the voice is perfect, it's like the perfect voice, it's exactly what I'm looking for, but they don't understand the text. So they're not putting the right emotion in certain word. I just had this happen with an audition. I was like, oh, this voice is so great. It was like a middle grade novel. It's so hard to find men who sound like 12-year-old boys. And I was like, this voice is so
Yeah.
perfect, but he just wasn't getting the humor. And if you don't get the humor or the language or the relationships that was going on, you're just not going to get the role. So I think for all of those things, come back to my initial point is, read that audition text if it is audition text, or if you've gotten the role, read and reread to make sure you fully understand the characters and the emotion and the narrative voice and all of that stuff. Because there are a lot of people in the industry, but if you're right for that role, you will get that role. That's my goal. That's like producer's role, to find that perfect exact voice for it.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, a couple of things. One, reset yourself. If you're used to doing commercial VO or radio or podcast or anything like, and then I give you a piece of text to audition from, and I hear this a lot in auditions from actors who are inexperienced in audiobooks, where they pick it up and they think they're just going to read it the way they would a Clorox commercial or something like that, right? And it's like, I walked in and she was standing there with a knife and she was stabbing me. And you're like, what, are you missing this? Like, are you missing? So, pay attention to the words, respect the punctuation. And, I say it on every episode of The Breakdown, I think, Jules, like, respect the narrative. Characters are important, but you're a storyteller. This is an intimate experience. You sitting and reading a story. Like, we all grew up with this, with our parents reading us stories, and think about the comfort that brought you when you were a child and the comfort you may bring your children now. And think about, that's what you want your listener to be. You want your listener in their car or on the train with headphones and feeling like you're the only person in the world they're talking to. It's intimate and it's storytelling. It's not selling, so think about all those things when you're recording auditions or approaching audiobook work.
No, absolutely. And I had to say that I did, to me, a big thing has always been the joy from going from doing books that honestly, didn't have, I call it a story underneath the story, right? It didn't have that extra layer or double or triple, to going to really amazing books. And there is some real acting there, but a lot of people, I think, especially just starting out, they get sucked into the books, like I was talking before, that are not that. So there's this wonderment about, going into books like you guys are talking about that are really well written from great authors. And those are such a joy. And so moving forward from there, what do you recommend for people trying to get started? We talked about donating time. That was a really great thing. Tell us that name again from the author, James
Langton. Sorry, little frog in my throat. James Langton. So his last name is Langton.
Awesome. And so I know if let's see, what do we, okay, so I guess finishing up for advice for young voice actors and getting them set in audiobooks. Should they go out and join Ahab Talent right now?
I would say first start by listening to an audiobook if you haven't yet. So, I mean, the thing is, for any actor who's done voiceover should join Ahab. So even if you haven't done audiobook work yet, but you've done video game work, you've done animation work, you've done commercial voiceover, whatever, get on Ahab and you can start with the genres of voiceover work that you have done and then use that to get into audiobooks. I would say if you have not listened to a single audiobook yet and you want to do audiobook work, you want to audition for audiobook work, listen first. You can even, I mean, I know we can't get together physically right now, but you can get together with people on Zoom if you have a few actors who are interested in doing this and read for each other and have people that will give you genuine feedback saying, this is not quite working, or like, and you can do multiple rounds of that until you guys improve together. But yeah, definitely if you're a voiceover actor of any kind, get on Ahab, and then you can improve those areas of voiceover that you're not yet comfortable with.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think. I did have one last question. I'm sorry, I got all these questions.
Always bring it.
So, when it comes to the financial aspect on Ahab, talk to me just a little bit about how actors are paid, how all that is working.
So, as opposed to most sites, we don't have a payment platform within the site. So what happens is we're curating the people that are entering the site, meaning from the content creator side, we're making sure they're legit content creators. And, the idea was always to create a marketplace for actors to find auditions and get cast for roles. But for us to kind of step out of that payment area as of right now and just say, you know what, you guys are able to offer talent, like content creators are able to offer talent a job through the platform, and then they go offline and figure out how everyone's going to be paid elsewhere. Because it's just not our business to be in the middle of every transaction that happens. We have no, transparency into any other content creator's way of working. I think it gives the power over to the parties that are negotiating whatever kind of contract they're trying to negotiate. They get out of the system, and we're not in the middle of it. It's really about discovery and things like that. And it's like I said earlier, we're not taking a cut of anything that's coming through the platform, and that was important to us. So like, I don't want to be in the middle of these transactions between actors and producers. I think, what we're trying to really hard to do when we built this platform, again, we built it on community, and we started with the people that we know, and we'll continue. Like when Jules and I are out talking to companies who do casting, or, hopefully at some point we'll get out there and talk to Activision or companies like that and say, how are you casting video games? What companies are you working with? Like, we're going out there seeking out like legit companies. We're not just like kind of opening it and saying, anyone who wants to cast books, like we're vetting companies that come into the system. So like we're trying our best to keep this almost curated. And you'll even see that with the number of actors who are like, our platform is approaching 10,000 actors, right? Worldwide, 67 countries. Wow. But we're pitching this to actors. Like, we're not just trying to raise the number so we can charge actors a subscription fee monthly, right? Yeah. So it's really about curating it, trying to keep like people who want to work and people who are legit trying to find talented people in the system. Take all your payment conversations and how people are transacting out, because I think so many people do it differently, right? I mean, there's some content creators who are like, oh, I'll just pay you through PayPal, or, like, for us, we work with SAG-AFTRA. We have a third-party paymaster, Penguin Random House has always worked with. And most of the audiobook industry, I think, works through paymasters. But again, I'll say it again, like, if you're going to take a job, make sure you're being paid fairly. Mm-hmm. And it does give you the power to do that. So,
and when Dan says vetting, the nice thing is, and again, keeping with the community spirit, Dan and I are personally vetting every single, so we have an Ahab team, but we look at every single application for the content creator. So if content creators want to get on the site, we're more than happy to have you, but all you have to do is go in there and sign up. You fill in some information about projects you have produced in the past, how long you've been in the industry, so we can really get a sense of you. We'll do some Googling. We basically have like side meetings where Dan and I meet up and we're like, okay, this person seems legit. Oh, this person I'm not sure. So we'll do some more digging and be like, oh, okay, they're actually great. So again, we're trying to keep this as like a nice community of people who are doing really interesting work.
No, I love that, because I was going to ask too about because you said that you'd opened Ahab for other content creators as well. And, I was going to ask, were you guys doing anything to make sure there wasn't, people getting on there that might take advantage of actors in that way?
Yeah, we're definitely cognizant of like what's going on in the platform world. And, part of the reason this has been a slow build, and we say this to our users all the time, where people are like, I can't believe you haven't changed this on the site. And it's like, look, first of all, let's start off. We're a book publisher. Like, we come from the book. We're not developers. We're not Google. We're trying to build an ecosystem slowly and methodically and really start to build things out that make sense. So every time we take a little bit of a step, and this step was a big step, opening it up to people, to cast other people, was always the intention when we decided, you know what, there's we're only going to cast 1,700 books a year, and maybe we're only doing a percentage of them in this platform because our authors read books and sometimes it's pre-cast, but there's tons of other work out there. So let's find legit people who are actually casting and need actors. So we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep trying to keep a community feel. And also, what Julie said before, we're talking about the Ahab breakdown and all those other things. We want to engage. I spend so much time, and I know, Jules, you do, where I'm texting back and forth with someone on Instagram or someone on LinkedIn or someone who saw a breakdown or heard about Ahab and had a question. I'm spending time with actors offline who are just like, look, I want to break in. Do you think I can get 20 minutes of your time just to throw some questions at you? Our team, we've got, we're approaching 18 producers at Penguin Random House Audio. Our team is always looking for talent and wants to engage. And I think a lot of this industry does. So,
yeah.
We're trying to just talk to the community of users, no matter who they are, and trying to just improve the site, which is, I think, the opposite of what a lot of sites are doing. I think a lot of these sites were built by people that never cast anything. They're just trying to find some money in their website.
And some of the things we've also done in the breakdown that have been really fun, I think really helpful for actors, is we've done these giveaways where we'll give away a tech consultation for an hour with 3 gurus, or to help you set up your home booth, or you'll get a consultation with an audiobook producer for a half hour to an hour. So we don't do those every single month, but we do those. I think we've done that twice so far, and I'd love to keep that up.
Those are so valuable.
It's so valuable, and especially for people who are starting out, they have not they have not made any money out from their work so far. So giving them something for free really helps to get them started.
Absolutely.
That tech episode, Jules, I remember Jules and I getting so many tech questions on the breakdown, and then at some point we were we're gonna have to do an episode about tech, and it's gonna be the driest episode we're gonna have all season.
We thought it was gonna be so boring.
Go down that rabbit hole and never come out. If you ask 50 different questions, 50 different people about what might they like, you'll have an argument with 50 different people. But it was one of the best episodes we had.
Yes.
Especially for people trying to break in, because it was give us your advice for someone if you just want to start to record a demo at home, what's the base gear you need?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a booth? You probably don't need an ISO booth. Go into a quiet corner, set up some blankets, and record a demo there, And that's what we're trying to do with the platform too, with the auditioning. People, we love getting clean samples, don't get me wrong. But the great thing about the platform is if you're auditioning for a piece, it doesn't have to be an all-day thing. Read the text, go upload it from your phone, just get the sample up there.
Absolutely. No, that's exactly what I do. I mean, some of the biggest episodes or things I've done has been on the tech side, because when you start out, you don't know those things at all. Well, listen, thank you guys so much. It's been incredible meeting you, and this information. I have to tell you, I really think the key when so many people are coming into our industry, it's important for us, I think, to do what we're doing right now, and that is sharing this information, getting it to people, knowing that they're not alone, and there's not some building in the sky over there that you can't ever find or see or know what's going on, because I think some people feel that way. And I always thought if we could come together more, it would be beneficial for everybody in the whole industry. So thank you guys so much. Any final words or anything for Ahab or anything like that before we go?
No, I'm just excited to see more people on there. I discover new people every single week, and it's why for most projects these days I am auditioning, and a lot of those are open call auditions. And I love that because when I'm auditioning and I'm doing an open call specifically, I'm listening through to all of those samples, everyone that comes in. Sometimes it's 150 people or more. And you might not be right for that role, but then I'll save you to a list on Ahab that I can refer back to later. So, for instance, I have like a tomboys list. I have a list of Brits. I have a list of people who are really amazing at doing many character voices. So, I'll save you so I have you in my back pocket for later. So, I would also say, going back to what we said earlier, just because you didn't get the role doesn't mean didn't do a good audition. Just keep going and keep yourself exposed to all of us, whether that's through the APA's events, those drinks events, the speed dating events where you can like talk to content creators, or just auditioning for us. But we're excited to see you guys on there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I would just say, keep at it, and engage with the community. Like, as Jules said, I mean, like, our community is very inclusive, the audiobook community more so than ever. And I think this platform is helping break down a lot of those barriers. We have, the fact that people, I hear this all the time when I talk to people, and they're like, I can't believe that you're even taking this call. And I'm like, you're part of the audiobook. You're an actor. Like, you're part of our community. Like, we don't make audiobooks without actors. That's our job, right? Like, and I think, we've always said it. I think the audiobook industry generally is the most inclusive of any entertainment field. But, talk to us, email us, find us on mostly on social. Of course, it's easier to find us. And ask questions, and don't be afraid. We're not intimidating people. We're super busy. We might not get back to you right away, but we will get back to you. That's how it works.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled for everybody to hear all this information. You all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Anthony, thanks for having us.
All right. Hey, I want to again say thank you to Dan and Julie for all of their time and amazing wealth of knowledge. I'm really excited about Ahab Talent. I think there is some incredible things that they are bringing to the table. I know for me, one of the big things is that there's not a fee to use the site. I mean, I think every other site that we use, there is a fee. So that's really exciting that they've put that together. That really shows that they're just thinking about the voiceover community as well as the content creators and the people who are putting out these books as well, so that they're not charging all of us to be on it. I think that's really awesome as well. And I also think that, one of the biggest things in this, that knowledge and understanding of not just the craft itself, the acting part, but also understanding where to find work, where to find people that are the movers and shakers in the business, has always been a challenge for me, and has always been something that is not easily found. So I'm so excited that we're doing this, and that Avio's Journey is doing a lot more interviews so that we can connect with all these incredible people. And we've got a lot of amazing more interviews coming up. I'm actually just blown away by the amount of people. I've started to reach out to a lot of people that I didn't even think knew me, and it turns out that they do, and they're willing to be on the show. So I'm excited about that, and about bringing you guys. I'm going to hold you in suspense, because there's nothing better than being in suspense. So, but anyways, thank you again, Dan and Julie. The website is ahabtalent.com. It's free to join, and, get on there and start auditioning. All right, guys, have a good one. Peace.